like what we knew church to be 2 years ago is not what it is today.
Correct.
I mean, like,
Correct.
just the idea of not being able to meet, which I think was so wise to not meet, you know,
Yes.
but it
Uh-huh.
was the right decision.
Yes.
But the over complicated conversations that pastors were having with people on different sides of the political aisle, and just there's
Yes.
no way to win. There's no way to talk through how do we show the love of Jesus to each other without it feeling like a compromise
Absolutely.
perspective,
Absolutely. And I think what pastors, to that point, I think what pastors are really freaking out about is they're realizing that before the pandemic, Sunday worship was a product,
Mhm.
as in like it was a product to sell.
Yes, yes, Roy.
And now, as they're trying to do things on Zoom and digitize everything, it's like, oh my gosh, like how do I recreate this product?
Yep.
How do I recreate this experience that keeps the people in the seats? You
Mhm.
know, and as I've been talking to pastors in my office, I'm saying I really want to listen to your anxiety. I really want to hear what you are most anxious about in this transition. And when they peel back all the layers of the onion, it's like, can I maintain this product? And I'm saying, are you talking about the product of the gospel? Or are you talking about the product of fame, or of success in your church? And it's like, oh snap,
That's
it's
right.
like, because the gospel as a product never changes, right? But who you are as a pastor, and your um I don't know, your rating as a pastor,
Yeah.
and what the status of your particular church, that's going to change for sure, maybe because the product on Sunday is not as good as the bigger churches with the bigger budgets. But man, the anxiety that comes up, and if they're able to face it, is just it's so palpable. And I think when they have the anxiety of the numbers dropping, and certain people with Enneagram numbers that are different than theirs, and all this, the counter transfer that comes up, it's going to show up in the counseling too.
Absolutely.
So many good things that come up as we really, I think the pandemic has almost forced us to have a market correction, and to take a look at, like, how are we pastoring, like under what motivation are we pastoring, and why? And these are the big things that I think can come up when we are brave enough to confront these things within ourselves.
I think so. Yeah, I think that I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking that as therapists, I don't think anyone thinks that we want to have followings or followers
Mm,
or write books or be, thought leader celebrities.
yes.
But so many of therapists do want
Yes,
that.
of course, of
And,
course.
and I think that that's true of pastors too. I think so many
Yes.
want that. And I'm saying that as a person who has grieved in the last, more than pandemic wise, but over the last few years with our podcast in particular, I didn't want to admit to myself that I
Mm,
wanted it to be something that got big.
of course.
But I did, Roy, I did. And it did not get, like,
Mm,
we had good following and good support, and we have good reviews and all that. And
yeah.
it succeeded my business goals, kind of,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
lack of a more therapeutic way to say that.
Right, right.
But it did not do what I somewhere deep in my heart hoped that it would,
Yeah.
which is really a counter gospel hope of mine. Is I didn't have the heart. I had the heart both to touch individual people,
Mhm, mhm.
and I wanted it to do something,
Yeah, of
And
course.
so over the last couple of years, like I said, pre-pandemic, I've been really grieving, lamenting, and having a heart correction in my
Mm,
prayer time of what effectiveness looks like, and what
I love that.
as therapists we say we have self-esteem, but then we have self-efficacy, and I think that in our vocation we want to be able to look at ourselves and feel effective and valuable for
Yes.
the people that we're trying to help, and we want others to see us as valuable, and that can be a very sensitive thing. So I think of as pastors, therapists get nowhere near the feedback that pastors get, right?
I agree. I agree.
Emails every week of all the
I
ways
can't imagine.
things were good and horrible. Yeah. So like it sounds horrible. So I think that you have to build thick skin early on, I think, in a pastoral role.
Mhm.
And I think that you have to build protections around your heart in a lot of ways, because there's so much big expectation of you.
Yes.
And I think that there's a attachment that we as churchgoers have with our pastors. I want my pastor to be an attachment figure, meaning
Mhm.
like I want them to be an ultimate example of emotional and spiritual safety for me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I want them to be like how little kids want parents to be. I want them to be all wise, all knowing, all caring, all compassionate, and to be studied and have PhDs in theology. And this is like, churchgoers have such big expectations of our pastors. And I think sometimes it's hard to know what kind of pastor you should be, right?
Yes.
And so when it comes to like being able to speak well, being able to lead well, being able to hold an organization that's safe and secure and healthy, and then to sit face to face with people and be like the ultimate pastoral counselor with them. I think our expectations are too high of pastors. And so when that's true, I think the person in that authority has to build a lot of defense mechanisms around their heart.
Of course.
So that is something that I think has been showing in the last couple of years as the enemy has attacked us with this pandemic and tried to bring us all down. I'm Baptist. I don't say things like that very lightly. Okay. But there's nothing truer than this, right? Trying to break the church apart, individual churches and the church in general apart. As that's happening, I think all these defenses are showing up for pastors in my life.
Yes.
And we're seeing humanity in a more clear way.
Yes.
My hope is that we can shift in a way where the churchgoers' expectations for pastors shift.
Right.
Treat you all like real people with,
yes.
with real relationships, right? And also like, so our expectations are shifting, and that people that have been wise in our faith for a long time are coming alongside our pastors and supporting them.
Yeah.
Emotional, connected, helping them to lead well,
Yeah.
but also that the underbelly, the dark side of what builds in your heart when you're a pastor and you're isolated and have all these expectations, and that you'll be able to take a look at that part too.
Yep.
Because there's a shadow that builds when you have to isolate yourself.
Yep. That's right.
In your role,
That's right. That's right.
You work with a lot of pastors recovering from sex addiction.
Yep.
And that's often a shadow side of it.
Facing themselves can be so intolerable that they have to numb themselves out immediately,
Yes, which is where the Enneagram is helpful, right? Because the Enneagram talks about how like your number is your, this is a mashing up of a couple contemplative theories, but like the Enneagram, your number, I'm a 7, that my 7 is really my protected self. My false self, that's hiding and surrounding and protecting my true self. And so Enneagram work is really about developing your way out of this number that you identify with. And being less and less that false self. So a 7 is like, our main thing is, we're fun, but we hide and avoid all pain. What a score to have for a therapist, Rory, that talks to people about pain all day. I'm in constant conflict with my own mind. So like that number, that idea, that identifier means that like, I'm someone that has a hard time tolerating real sadness, real anger, and that I cover it up either by trying to avoid it myself, or like I try to calm you down and make it okay.
Yes. Right.
And then I'm not able to really sit with people in their real pain. And that really is a skill that I've had to build over time, but also how do I not run from real pain? And
that takes a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. But underneath that is like someone that has real empathy and wants to
Yes.
feel that empathy, and like doesn't have to be afraid of people's anger or their sadness or their fear, you know?
Oh, I really want, I mean, what you're talking about in yourself is just like, that's exactly what I hope every pastor in the guild can just get incrementally better at, for themselves. Like that's what a gift that would be for their church.
Totally, like to not be impacted, you know? And like my pastor talks about how he talks about this from the front all the time. So I think I can say it. He talks about how he has a really hard time in counseling sessions because he has a hard time with tears. He
Yes.
kind of freaks out a
Yes.
little bit, and he's working
Yes.
on the skill of being able to sit with someone when they cry, you know?
Yes. What is that countertransference, right?
What is it?
Yes. Yes. Let's explore that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so from the Enneagram perspective, like, so we talk about a 7, but as a 3, which is like kind of the I never had the descriptors down. I always have to think them through, but I have it in my head. So like as a 3, you're someone who is driven to succeed and make something important happen,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
And what's the underlying there? You are not a meaningful or valuable person
mm.
unless you are successful, or unless you've achieved these big goals, or unless you keep moving towards being
Oh,
bigger and greater and greater.
yes.
So
Yes.
like 3 is a good example of like a leader who has amazing skill
Yes.
that may lead people in the wrong direction because they're trying to create a product, like you're talking about, for their own glory.
Yes.
It's not, that's not an, it sounds kind of like an evil, selfish person when you say it that way, but we all have things
Totally.
like that, you know?
Totally. And we need to be able to talk about this, and normalize it and
Yes.
and empathize with it. And oh man, this is such good stuff.
We need to be able to be human, and pastors
Yes.
need to be able to be human. Like, yeah, as therapists, we are trained in our training, we have this ability to like keep it real. I
Hmm.
was trying to explain this to someone the other day. Like when you're a therapist and you're training to be a therapist, like you start to share conversations in a different way
Yes.
than you do with everyone else, or that everyone else does with you. Like our conversations are much more like emotionally intimate, I think,
Yeah.
as colleagues.
Hmm.
And some of it's just we all think on that level, you
Yep.
know, but we're also trained to consult, which sounds not as emotionally intimate as it really is. We put this
Mm,
professional face on it. But
mm.
when I'm consulting with a colleague, I'm complaining and feeling all my feelings about my client with you in a consultation way. And if I don't process that out with you,
Yes.
then I'm not doing my job effectively. We're back to countertransference. Because if I'm feeling a ton of feelings about my client, I'm not going to show it to them professionally, because that's
Right.
part of the role, is to
Right.
be here
Right.
for you, not for my own, not have you be there for my emotion, you
Right.
know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But if I don't bring it then to my colleague and go, oh, it's just driving me crazy and reminding me of my dad, um, then I'm not being the most effective therapist that I can be, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
And I always think about how lonely the pastor job is,
Yes.
and how you always have to be on, not like us, Roy. We're like, we're in session. And then as soon as we're done, we're anonymous again out in the world, right?
That is so true.
And we can turn it on, turn it off. Maybe we have to join a group. If we're doing Celebrate Recovery, maybe therapists have to join a Celebrate Recovery group, like not in your community, because you don't
Totally.
want to show up with your clients, but like,
Totally.
but we're able to be anonymous, and it feels like pastors have a really hard time just getting to be people, and they need to be people. They're
I
you
feel for them so much in that way. Oh
be just
gosh.
a mommy or a daddy sometimes, not a pastor dad,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not a pastor husband. Like,
Yes.
that would be such a hard relationship to have to maintain. Um, yeah, anyway, I think I have a big heart for the role. And um, I think that having to speak to things from the front all the time, um, and having to take responsibility for a big group of people and be the leader of those people all the time, plus
Mm.
the time investment and all that. I just think that it's a job that, yes, the Holy Spirit feeds us and restores our soul. Yes. But we need to do active work I think pastors need to do active work to have their souls restored in community, not
Yes.
just like in prayer, you know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh man, I love this. I could
But
talk
that's
about I could talk about this for a long, long time with you.